2021. So how this will work is we're going to spend about an hour discussing some of the questions that Morgan and I will introduce. So please just make sure to be truthful and honest. So we wanted to organize this panel to continue some of the conversations that we've been having as a community, both in real life and on social media. But to kind of talk a little bit more about the panel, I'm not sure how many of you have participated in like a story exchange, but at SCH we do them fairly often. And they're designed to create radical empathy. And through this, me and other SCH students have learned the importance of sharing stories and being empathetic and empathizing with others. And there's so much learning that can happen in these settings, which is why we've organized this and brought you guys here today.
So I'm not sure like about the statistics, but I would say we're pretty diverse compared to some of the other schools that I've either attended or seen. We have basically a lot of all the minority organizations like Black Student Union, Asian Student Association. We have SALSA for Latinx people. We have, I'm forgetting the acronym, but we have an LGBTQ group. So I say we're pretty representative in that sense. I'm not really sure how supported I feel at Penn Charter. I feel like some of the problems we've run into is just like people aren't motivated to make change. Like there are a few people who, it's basically like the same group of people that lead all the events in terms of like racial identity. And it's tiring on us, obviously, because we're putting in a lot of work. And then there's some other people at school who really just don't want to make change or don't really care what's going on. So I think that's more of like an institutional change that needs to happen, coming from the faculty all the way through the students. So I definitely think we have some work to do, but I do think we have a decent platform to start off of.
I think that we do somewhat good around education around racial identity. We have assemblies for each of the affinities. They come and they do a little assembly about the culture or whatever they feel like they want to do. But for the culture of Friend Central, I feel like we're still trying to move away from this colorblind kind of idea, because people don't really like talking about race and they don't really like acknowledging it. And when it comes up in like an assembly, there's always people afterwards who are like, that's not necessary, or there's no racist at Friend Central, like we don't have to do this. So I think that it's something, we just got a new director of equity and inclusion at our school. So I hope that we're moving forward with it, but it's still kind of a process that we need to acknowledge more at Friend Central.
I can say that we really don't have a lot of diversity. I'm one of the 4 out of Black girls in my grade alone, and in total we have like 500 girls, and there's about like maybe 20 Black people in all of our school. We really don't talk about race that often. It'll happen like an incident will happen and then we'll address it, but we really don't talk about it. And it only started to change this year because we just got our first Black teacher, and she is the head of diversity. So hopefully that'll change.
I think our community is really open and willing to have like those conversations. And we have all the affinity groups that like Gabrielle said, but I think like we kind of like have a conversation about it and then we move on. Whereas like we want to incorporate that into like our everyday like life, and we're like learning about Black history like all the time, or like Asian history all the time. Like it's kind of like we'll have that one day that we have our conversation. I think our community is willing to like take those risks to like implement those things into our curriculum, but we just have to like do it.
Speak on behalf of Friend Select. So I think like the culture at Friend Select is pretty diverse and pretty open, since like our location is in the city, so like we get more like people from different backgrounds. Like, what I've noticed is that like when it comes to DEI work, in school, people are a little less hesitant than like when they talk about injustices like on like Instagram or Snapchat, and so like that's what I've noticed. But like overall, I think Friends like is pretty inclusive.
I would say that there's a interesting culture of racial identity at our school because there's like a good portion of people who really go out of their way to, you know, make sure people feel included or, you know, take the steps to learn about other racial identities. But I think there's also a pretty substantial amount of people at our school who don't care at all and don't care to learn, which is like a problem we often run into whenever we do these kinds of diversity related events where we have like groups of people who kind of shut down the whole conversation or, you know, talk about it later in the lunchroom or something, like, oh, like they're just yelling at us, like can't wait to get yelled at for 30 minutes. So I think that there's a very interesting divide that most people kind of fall on one side or the other. There's not really a lot of like middle ground people, in my opinion anyway. I've been at the school for about 14 years now, and I can say like there are some teachers that you know will like have your back if something goes down. Like when George Floyd was murdered, there was like a handful of teachers that I knew were going to be in, you know, the Zoom calls that we had about it and were writing emails. But then there are other teachers who rarely ever even talk about any sort of thing like that. So I think there's support, but you have to look for it.
I've been obviously following them, especially the Black Mainline Speaks one, because that's the main one that Penn Charter is on. And some of these stories, like some of them I knew about, but some of them I hadn't heard of. So honestly, in the very beginning, I not necessarily took it personally, but like I took it to heart. I was like, you know, this is like really sad that people don't feel safe enough to share these stories in person. And the only way for them to feel comfortable is behind an anonymous survey where for any change to happen, they would have to say that this happened to them. And I know how traumatizing that can be to have to relive a story like this. So I was really hurt by this. I was like, you know, like I only have 2 more years of Penn Charter, and I really do want to leave a difference for the, like, I want to change the school for the kids behind me. Like my sister's in 3rd grade. I don't want for her to have to, I don't want to get a call from her when she's in high school saying the same racial incidents are happening then that are happening now.
There have been some arguments with people who are like, well, no, this didn't really happen, or this is not the way it happened. And there's also people who are like posting not blatantly against the movement, but kind of implying that like what you guys are saying are wrong. So it's definitely started some controversy. But that's just a small portion of like the huge amount of people who are posting in support of the Black Lives Matter movement, which is surprising to me because, like I said before, like we don't really, Friends Central doesn't really like to have the conversation around racism. But my only issue with the social media posting is that I don't want for people's allyship or activism to be performative. And that's what a lot of it seems to be most of the time. Like Gabby said, they don't want their friends to be mad at them, or they want to seem like good people, because I see people posting, but I know that they say different things when they're at school or when they're around certain people. And I want people to actually genuinely feel the way that they're feeling when they post. And I know there have been people who said like they didn't post because they take time to educate themselves, which I like a lot too. I don't want you to post but not know what you're posting about. I've had a lot of people of color friends contact me and say like they're in support. And like I said, that was pretty surprising, but I'm happy and I'm glad that it's kind of everyone's like educating themselves in a way that they didn't when we were on campus.
The one thing that kind of irritated me was the Black Screen Day, where it would be like people who didn't talk about it at all, like were silent the entire time, and I was watching everybody. And the one day where you post that Blackout Tuesday thing, everyone like came out of nowhere and posted it. Even girls who have like said nothing at all and they only posted that one thing and were like, oh, we're in this together. It kind of felt like useless because like how are you silent during this whole entire thing, but you can post the black screen, which basically shows nothing.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like people were there like when it was like trendy, and then they just kind of like, okay, back to regular day bikini pics. And it was kind, and then they would put in the comments like Breonna Taylor, and it was just it was offensive. It's like you can't post a bikini pic and then put a Black woman's name in your caption. Like, that's not cute, and it's offensive to her life, and like that just hurt my feelings. And then I think for the Black Mainline Speaks, like it was like disheartening to see that like some of the people would go to their school and say their story and their school would do nothing about it. And it's I just being in a space where your voice, like even when you speak out against the actions against you, people still don't believe you. That's just awful.
So like for me, like my sister goes to Baldwin, just like seeing all those posts about people's experiences at Baldwin was kind of disheartening for me. So hence like I personally thought that had like Baldwin would be like a great fit for my sister, and that she would feel welcome. But like now, just like seeing that, I'm like on the fence. My mom was on the fence too, wondering if she should if my sister should switch schools or not.
Yeah, I definitely think there was, like, to all of your points, like the performative actions were like all over SEH. I do think that there were a few people, at least that I knew, that wanted me to like, I always call this like the guilt check, where they kind of texted me and let me know like they supported me, or they like, it kind of felt like they like went through their contacts and like found every Black friend that they had and then like said, hey, just letting you know I'm supporting you, which wasn't like, it's not a bad thing because I'm glad that they're, you know, taking the time to do that, but it still felt kind of contrived because they didn't like talk to me after that. And that's not everybody. There are people, like white allies, who have still like continued the conversation, but like the majority of them really kind of just kind of gave up on it, I guess. I found it disheartening that the people who seem to go out of their way to, you know, lend their support to me, kind of showed that they didn't care that much. Like they just wanted to say it so they would feel better about themselves, and then kind of left it at that. I think since Leah kind of touched on white allies, that can be our next topic of discussion.
From my white ally friends, I'd rather they not talk over Black people, because I've found that sometimes that can happen, that they say some things that they think they know, but they don't know too much, so they're just talking over us. Like, I'd rather they listen and hear what we have to say and then let us speak for ourselves, because I really don't like when white people want to act like the saviors and speak for Black people. Teachers seem to think that like it's such a scary thing, like especially with my school, like since there's a majority of white students and the white teachers don't want to approach the white students about race, they just don't do it at all, and that's when incidents happen. So the teachers definitely need to be taught how to talk about race, but just don't make it an awkward topic, because it shouldn't.
Yeah, I feel like in these times, I do feel like being a white ally can be difficult, because I feel like there you don't want to do too little, but you don't want to do too much to overtalk. So there is a perfect zone, there's a perfect middle zone. And I'm not completely sure what I want, but what I know is I don't want for you to be doing just the performative action. In terms of teachers, probably just like educating themselves, because they haven't been in the light during coronavirus for, in terms of like racial incidents. I feel like it's been more with like the students, but this is a good time for teachers to like read and watch movies and like watch documentaries and things, and just like watch what they say, because comments that teachers have, they stick with students for years.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything Gabrielle said. I think that students like we have like different diversity conferences that people can go to. Just go to them. Like we have cross conversations at our school, and there's just so many opportunities for people to be educated. And on social media you'll see, oh, like I'm totally for it, but like you get back to school and no one's really like for it.
I agree with Sydney. I just really ask for people to educate themselves. And if you're not sure about a topic, ask questions. I know that sometimes people say like they feel uncomfortable because they want to come off as racist or prejudiced. And I feel like if you ask the question and let me like tell you the right language to use around that, or how to not sound racist in the future, I would like it more than if you just like stayed ignorant towards it. And then also, if like I call you out on something, don't get defensive about it. Just take what I'm saying and like trust me that I know what I'm talking about, being a person of color at a PWI. Yeah.
Questions are great, but at the same time, like, there's Google. Like, I'm not supposed to be, like, I'm a 15-year-old high school student. I'm not supposed to be the expert on Black culture or all Black people.
So what I want in a white ally is that, like, they gotta be ride or die. Like, you can't be like half and half. Like, just like, don't talk about this, but talk about this. Like, you just gotta be like, you gotta give the full 110%. And for the teachers, I think just having more of those uncomfortable conversations in the classroom.
I think that my biggest thing for both like white allies, like students, and then also teachers and faculty, is to like not immediately be defensive if somebody, specifically a person of color, calls you out on saying something. Regardless of whether or not you think that it's racist or not, it kind of doesn't. I mean, this is blunt, but it doesn't matter if you think it's racist, because if someone was offended, then that means that you messed up. And thing to keep in mind is just to be able to receive that criticism, especially if it's like respectful. And I also think that teachers should do a little bit better of a job monitoring what white students say in classes, especially during like sensitive conversations, like how Gabrielle was talking about, like the like discussion of slavery in like a history class. Like I've had interesting comments be said during those kinds of discussions, and like I personally felt really uncomfortable saying something in the middle of class and like disrupting everything. So I would appreciate if teachers who know they're going to be teaching that sort of subject matter kind of took it upon themselves to make sure that what is being said is respectful and doesn't put any like people of color on the spot to just explain their whole race.
People always want to say that it wasn't their intention. And like I said, it may not have been your intention, but it's very impactful, and your words are impactful because these stereotypes have been around for so long. And, people were trying to be a progressive society. So like, if you really care, like try and make yourself a part of the progression and just educate yourself.
The word that I use to go along with microaggressions is macroaggressions, because like a bunch of like microaggressions can become a macro aggression. And for some people, when they hear a microaggression, I know for me, I usually like brush it off, but like but like if you constantly keep on getting those microaggressions, then they're going to become something bigger than a microaggression.
Yeah, I think a big thing about microaggressions in my experience is like, I think a lot of people don't realize like the mental toll that they can take on you, especially like how Chris was saying, like if they continually build up. Like for pretty much most of my life, like I got a lot of comments about my hair, mostly because I changed my hair so often. But since I, am not white and I went to school with mostly white people, anytime my hair looked different than theirs, they had to comment on it. They touched it, they pulled it, they braided it, they yanked it, like the whole 9 yards. Like I think a lot of people didn't realize like that like messes with your self-image and your self-confidence if people are constantly pointing out things about how you look, even if they're not saying it looks bad, just constantly commenting on someone's, appearance or you know, the way they talk or the way they dress or, you know, the type of things that they have, it'll make you feel really self-conscious. And if you're already going to a PWI, like you already feel kind of self-conscious. So I think it's really important to remember that, like you were saying, like, even though that wasn't what you meant to say, you have to understand, like, that comment could, like, really hurt somebody in a way that you maybe didn't expect. Like, maybe, you know, it's like that one comment that will, like, make them really have a moment, you know? Be receptive to apologize and take back whatever you said, even if you didn't mean it, because those types of things really do hurt.
That's something that I've been working on, trying to like figure out how to nicely correct my friends when they say things that are not okay, while also trying to keep the relationship intact. So that's something that I've personally been working on in terms of microaggressions. It's like, you don't know, that might be the language that they've heard growing up their entire life. That doesn't make it right at all. But if that's what their parents and grandparents have been saying, like, it's no surprise that those are the sayings that they're going around spewing to their friends. So I definitely think that once we get in the habit of calling people out in a way where non-POC don't take it aggressively or like we're personally attacking them, that's the thing. Like, we're not personally attacking you as a person, we're just attacking the thing that you said. So once we can like separate those two and we can just get in the norm of doing that, I think that we can make some real progress.
Yeah, and I would say I think it's really just important to have the conversations, because maybe sometimes people don't know where to start in educating themselves. And I think in the schools, if we're having the conversations about hair, then people will like just understand from like the jump. Because I know, like, being in a PWI for a while now, I just feel like just no one not being able to say, don't touch my hair, just like not knowing like I had that voice, and just like everyone like just coming up to me, like, and like having no like Black teachers to say like, hey, this is why you shouldn't do that. It just like you feel like anything you say doesn't matter. So I think if you just have those conversations like really young, it just helps so many people, and helps so many people have like a positive learning experience, because everyone should be able to feel safe at school.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's also important to think about like how, yes, like microaggressions are happening on a person to person level, but how much they affect the culture of the school, regardless of who they're fed to. Like, for example, like Leah saying that people made comments on her hair, and like sharing that with me or sharing that with any other people of color that attend our school, that leaves an impression on me and like reflects on how I see the rest of the student body. I think it's really important, like you all said, to call out microaggressions, because we want to keep the culture. We want to allow Black students and students of color to feel comfortable in their own skin and feel comfortable with who they are. And if we're just letting microaggressions slide, that's not going to be able to happen. Thank you guys all so much for participating. Thank you so much for being honest and like sharing your time with us. So I'm going to say bye, because I don't know when this is going to end. But thank you all again so much.
Yeah, I talked about it a little bit earlier, but Antonio Williams, the head of DEI at Penn Charter, his office has basically become just like the safe haven for mainly the Black students, but obviously it's open to everyone, but it is a safe space for like all POC. But like I eat lunch in there, and it's freshmen, you know, you got the new freshmen coming in with like the seniors, and it's just, we bond in there, we play cards, we play games, all that good stuff. So that's definitely, him and his office has definitely made me feel safe at Penn Charter.
I feel the same way with my diversity club. That's truly where like all the Black girls in my school go to just vent and also just to be heard, because that's like the only place where we can really be heard by the teachers that participate in that club. So those specific teachers also make me feel a little safe because they are willing to hear us and try to promote change in our school. And that's basically the only way I can feel affirmed, I guess.
Yeah. So like Gabby, I also went to SDLC last December. I went to the Penn Charter Conference. I helped lead our own conference when I was a freshman. So those things and like meeting other Black people from other schools to talk about our experiences, that makes me feel very affirmed, like outside of my community. But at Friends Central, a lot of the time, well, basically all the time, all the Black kids hang out. Like we all eat in one section in the lunchroom, which is a good thing and a bad thing. But when we're like all getting along and stuff, that feels good because it just knows that you have people that have your back and who will speak up for you if racial injustices happen on campus. I'm president of the BSF at my school, so when we do like our club fair and seeing everyone like sign up and have fun in that club just to like get away kind of from all of the commotion that happens. There are some Black faculty who are leaving this year, but when they were there, they made us feel really comfortable. We always could come into their offices whenever. So I think there's a lot of ways where I feel affirmed on campus as just like a getaway. And yeah.
For me, like I have two safe havens at Friends Select. My first one's BSU, and so like in like the upper school we have like I would say like about five um like um like five teachers who are faculty at advisors for that club. And so just like seeing them in the hallway, just like just like checking on the Black students really makes me feel like safe.
I think that things that make me feel affirmed at AFS are like just like the BSU and like the diversity group that we have. I think it's important for me to be around like-minded people like who have like the same intent and want to like better the community.
I think I feel the most affirmed at SCH when I mean, obviously like safe spaces where like it's, like a Black affinity group or something like that, where we have like space to talk. But I think I also feel really affirmed when teachers speak pretty candidly about race and like, maybe some issues that the school already has. Like we had a pretty large virtual meeting, like all school wide, about like the BLM protests and things like that. We had a couple actually, and it made me feel better to hear these teachers, especially the ones that I particularly like, just being so outspoken in their support, and then talking about the ways that they've been promoting activism in their communities and like teaching their own kids about like what to do. So I always find that really, really comforting to hear teachers just be okay with talking about it. Like it's not such a taboo subject, because that makes me feel more comfortable opening up about my own racial experiences, as long as they aren't, going a little bit too far and like putting words in my mouth, things like that. I think that's probably when I feel the most affirmed.
I guess the relationship is okay. Like there's some people that I know that I really wouldn't like get along with just because like from past experiences, and I know that their beliefs, especially political, aren't the same as mine. So I try to stay away from conversations relating to politics with them just because I know we're not even gonna like come to a conclusion. But there are a good amount of girls in my class that know, like, I don't know how to word this, but like they're more accepting and they're more like I guess like easy to talk to because they understand like where we're coming from, and they try to include themselves in like our diversity meetings just to like understand what we feel when we say like we're uncomfortable with some things that might happen at our school. So really the relationship with my peers that don't identify as Black is like, it's okay. It's mostly with girls who try to educate themselves, but the ones that don't, I really don't have a relationship with.
Yeah, so I used to live in New Orleans and I moved here for freshman year. But I went to like a BWI, but like all literally basically just all white people. I don't really think I had a Black friend who I went to school with until like 7th or 8th grade. So there was definitely some like pent up like racial tension that I didn't even notice as like a middle schooler that was there. And then moving to Penn Charter was definitely an interesting switch. I have a friend group now of like 10 just like Black girls. So that's a great space. But I also do have a decent amount of white friends, mainly white females though. I'm not really sure. I don't really think I have any white guy friends that go to Penn Charter. But most of the white friends that I have are through sports, not really through just like casual interaction. Like it's really because like I was forced in a space with them and then we like made a connection. But I mean, they're great, so like that's fine. But there are definitely some of my friends are definitely more progressive than others, not even necessarily like, out marching in protest, but still have different views from me. So during this time, it's been kind of like weird with our relationship. But I also haven't seen them in like 6 months. So I've definitely fallen off with some people. So we'll see how that goes at school. But yeah, those are my relationships.
As I said before, we're kind of like split up at my school. So it's like the Black kids all sit in one section. Then the white kids get like majority of the cafeteria because it's a PWI. And then like the international students have their own like little clique, I guess. But like Gabby said, a lot of the connections come from sports. And also I was in my school from middle school, and in middle school it was not split up like that at all. That's more of a high school thing. So a lot of my white friends or non-Black POC friends I have from middle school because I was more connected with them. Like we didn't switch buildings to go to classes. We were all in one building. It was less of us, so there were more people in classes. Well, less people in classes and more time for us to connect. But for like people I know who came in high school, a lot of their like white friends they know like through sports.
So I have a really diverse friend group, and I know starting at AFS, I felt like I would talk about, people would come up to me and say like, oh, you're talking about race a lot, or you're talking about like being Black a lot, and like then I feel like I had to like tone back my identity a bit. But then I feel like later on, like it progressed, and I like found friends who like accepted me for who I was, and it was like easier for me to like talk about topics I'm passionate about. So I think that like my relationships with like my non-white peers like grew like as my like self-acceptance, but like I know at the beginning it was like really rocky for me to like be who I wanted to be.
Since I've been going to SCH for 14 years, pretty much all of my friends until like I want to say 7th grade were white. Like pretty much all of them actually. I kind of jumped around friend groups, but like even my oldest friend now, he's white. Like I've always kind of had white friends until there were just more Black people for me to be friends with. So I think that I've become like sort of like the bridge between, white people and Black people in a sense. Like I don't think that I've ever, well, that's not true, but like I don't know that I'm ever super conscious about, who I'm really talking to, just because like the friends that I have now, I've got like a solid 5 friends that I talk to consistently. They're kind of like, I can say anything to them. So I don't pay attention that much to like the diversity piece of it. But I will say that I'm more comfortable now that my friend group is more diverse. That is to say that I don't have, like a good relationship with white people. Most of my friends outside of that friend group are white. Like the theater organization at our school is pretty much all white. There's, you know, maybe 10 non-white people in it. I don't do much else. So, you know, it's pretty much like that's kind of it for me. So I think I feel more comfortable, you know, when I have some more POC faces looking back at me when I'm, you know, talking about various things. But I don't think that I've ever had like a terrible relationship. That doesn't say that I haven't gotten annoyed, but I don't think I've ever been like, oh, like I can't be friends with a white person at my school, you know? Like I've always kind of felt like I'm gonna make do with what I got, I guess.
I feel like at Front Central in high school, at least, socioeconomic status is not very like it's not a big part of it. I feel like personally for me, it was more of a big part in middle school because, like I said, in middle school, friend groups were more diverse. So like my white friends were like richer. But I think socioeconomic status plays more of a part in alumni and parents who give money to the school. There has been some incidents at my school where they were supposed to be a speaker, but like there were parents who didn't agree with the speaker who give money to the school, so then they canceled the speaker because the people with the money didn't like it. So it's more of a factor when it comes to alumni and parents more than in the students, which is something I kind of like a little bit. So yeah.
There have definitely been some situations at Penn Charter where like the money's doing the talking, and some of those I feel like I was oblivious to in like middle school, but like now as like a high school student, like I'm seeing these things and I'm like, that's just not okay. And the other time I would say, not the only other time, but the other time I would say when socioeconomic status comes into play is when like the white students assume that the black people, but specifically black guys, are like only there to play sports and like that's how they got their ticket into a private school or whatever. And definitely heard my fair share of those comments to some of my friends, and that never feels good.
I'll be upfront. Like I'm very fortunate. And my family's like financial status. And we have been like since I've started going to the school. Like I live in Chestnut Hill. Like I'm open about it, but I do think that there's like sometimes some assumptions about, you know, like what I can and can't do or do and don't do in my free time because of my race. Like I feel like I've had some side looks or something when I talk about how like I mostly shop at like Target, Primark because I want to, not because like I can't go somewhere else. I mean, I'm personally kind of broke, but that's not has anything to do with my family. So like I feel like there's been a lot of assumptions sometimes made about me because like I talk about where I shop a lot, or I say like, oh, you know, well, that's really expensive. Or like I talk about like money sometimes. Like I get like, you know, like the side looks or like the or they like will make like a sort of sound that's kind of disapproving. That, you know, is annoying, but I've come to expect it just because I know going to a school like SDH where a lot of people are like very financially well off. It's like already kind of a complex that people have of, you know, I probably have more money than you, which, you know, that's neither here nor there. So I've come to expect it, but I do think that like a lot of other people who maybe haven't been at the school as long immediately get profiled as having like less money because of their race.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.